Introduction to Marie Bookchin on Spontaneity and Organization by Maurice Brinton. There can be few words more misused in politics than the word, quote, spontaneity, end quote. It is often used to denote something which seems to happen without obvious cause, without apparently being the result of previous preparation. In the sense of a, quote, effect without a cause, end quote, there is probably no such thing as, quote, spontaneity, end quote, either in politics or life. Human behavior is always influenced by previous experience. If a person is not consciously aware of why he is acting in a particular way, this does not at all mean that there are no causes for what he is doing. It only means that causes elude him. Marie Bookchin does not use the word, quote, spontaneity, end quote, in this crude and unreflecting way. It is important to stress this semantic point in his short introduction to his essay, first published in Liberation early in 1972. In Bookchin's own words, quote, spontaneity is not mere impulse, end quote. It does not imply, quote, undeliberated behavior and feeling, end quote. Quote, spontaneity is behavior, feeling, and thought that is free of external constraint, of imposed restriction, end quote. It is, quote, not an uncontrolled effluvium of passion and action, end quote. Insofar as the individual removes the fetters of domination that have stifled her or his self-activity, she or he is acting, feeling, and thinking spontaneously, end quote. Bookchin here uses the word, quote, spontaneity, end quote, as we would use the word, quote, autonomy, end quote. Literally speaking, autonomous means, quote, what makes its own laws, end quote, and therefore by implication, quote, which acts in its own interest, end quote. With the advocacy of spontaneity, understood in this sense, we have no significant disagreement with Bookchin. Our own views on this matter are outlined in greater detail in Solidarity and the Neo-Narodniks. Full autonomy has both organizational and ideological implications. Bookchin deals with both in some depth. He points out that, quote, spontaneity does not preclude organization and structure, end quote, thereby nailing a very widespread Leninist distortion of the libertarian case. Bookchin stresses that spontaneity, in the sense of which he uses the term, quote, ordinarily yields non-hierarchical forms of organization, end quote. We would go perhaps further and stress that no collective autonomy is meaningful which does not have organizational repercussions. Autonomous activity in life, whether in the realm of practice or in the realm of ideas, is impossible in hierarchically structured organizations. As Bookchin points out, quote, the tragedy of the socialist movement is that it opposes organizations to spontaneity and tries to assimilate the social process to political and organizational instrumentalism, end quote. The main impact of Bookchin's essay is, however, on the need for ideological autonomy, for breaking all the intellectual fetters of the past, for sweeping the cobwebs away and that still clutter so much of the thinking of the left. Bookchin's greatest insight is his statement of the need to eliminate domination in all of domination's forms, not merely material exploitation. Bookchin stresses, quote, the widespread erosion of authority is such, in the family, in the schools, in vocational and professional areas, in the church, in the army, indeed in virtually every institution that supports hierarchical power and every relationship which is marked by domination, end quote. He takes the whole discussion into areas largely avoided by the left, and is not scared of challenging many of their most fundamental assumptions. His own writing is a vindication of his belief in a creative, conscious, and coherent spontaneity. Quote, consciousness, end quote, Bookchin tells us, quote, has its own history within the material world, and increasingly gains sway over the course of material reality. Humanity is capable of transcending the realm of blind necessity. It is capable of giving nature and society rational direction and purpose." End quote. If the mass of the population is to become the creative subject of history and not just an inert object compelled to do certain things because of the conditions of its existence, this kind of message must be taken seriously and its implication thought out. For all those who, whatever their age, are not suffering from a hardening of the categories, Bookchin's views are an important contribution to an ongoing debate. Solidarity Pamphlet 49, December 1975.